Welcome back to the Deep Dive. Today, we are opening a file that sits right at this intersection of a massive global health crisis and some seriously high-level optical physics. We're talking about eyesight, specifically the absolute explosion of myopia, that's nearsightedness, that we're seeing all around the world.
It's staggering.
And just to be clear, we aren't just talking about needing glasses to see the whiteboard or, the movie screen.
No, this is a fundamental physiological shift in how human eyes are developing.
A physiological shift.
It really is. I mean, if you look at the numbers, they're just startling. In major urban centers in East Asia, so places like Hong Kong, Singapore, we're seeing prevalence rates of 80 to 86%.
86%?
In 15-year-olds. So that means the vast majority of an entire generation is growing up with elongated eyeballs.
And elongated is the key word there, isn't it? Because for so long, the whole conversation was just about correction.
Right.
You can't see far away. Fine. Here's a piece of glass. It bends the light, hits your retina, and boom, you can see. Problem solved.
But that's just a Band-Aid, really. It fixes the symptom, the blur, but it doesn't touch the underlying cause.
Exactly.
And that's where the entire industry has pivoted over, the last decade. We've moved from just correcting vision to actually controlling it.
Okay, controlling it.
The goal now is to send a signal to the eye, literally, a biological instruction that tells it, stop growing, you're long enough.
Which brings us right to the stack of research we have on the desk today. We're doing a deep dive into a specific clinical trial. It was published in Translational Vision Science and Technology in November of 2025.
And it comes out of Singapore, which makes sense.
Right, which, given those stats we just mentioned, is basically ground zero for this issue.
It is. This is a study from the Esler R&D Center there. And what makes this paper so interesting, is that it isn't just testing a new lens against a placebo.
No.
It's testing the current high-tech standard against a new, let's call it a turbocharged prototype.
So it's a heavyweight title fight between two optical technologies.
Right.
In one corner, you've got the lens that's already out there. It's called H.A.L.T.
Right, the standard.
And in the other corner, a new version they're calling H.A.L.T. MAX.
Yeah.
And the goal was basically to see if turning up the volume on the optical design would slam the brakes on eye growth more effectively than what we have now.
Turbocharged is a good way to put it. They really hypothesized that if they increase the intensity of that optical signal, they could get a stronger physiological response from the eye.
And the results included something that, honestly, it made me stop and reread the data table 3 times.
I know the part you mean.
We always talk about slowing growth.
Right.
But in this study, they saw eyes that actually physically shortened.
Which is the kind of holy grail conversation in myopia management right now. Can we reverse it? But before we get there, because that is a huge claim, we really need to understand the weapon of choice here.
Yes.
We need to unpack this H.A.L.T. technology.
Let's break it down. So H.A.L.T. stands for Highly Aspherical Lenslet Target.
It's a mouthful.
It is pure technobabble. But visually, these lenses are quite distinct. If you hold one up to the light, what are you actually seeing?
Well, the center looks just like a normal piece of corrective glass. That's your distance zone, where the child looks through to see, the bus number or the TV clearly.
Okay.
But surrounding that clear center are 11 concentric rings.
And these rings aren't just decorative lines. They're made up of what they call lenslets.
Tiny, contiguous, aspherical lenslets. Thousands of them just packed into these rings.
Okay, let's pause on that word aspherical. In normal optics, a spherical lens has a constant curve, kind of like a slice of a basketball.
Sure.
And a spherical lens has a more complex, varying curve. Why does that complexity matter so much here?
It matters because of how it handles light. A standard lens, it tries to focus everything onto a single sharp point on the retina.
Right.
These aspherical lenslets do something very, very specific. They take those light rays and they focus them in front of the retina.
So this is the whole concept of myopic defocus.
Precisely. But H.A.L.T. does it in a unique way. Because of that specific asphericity, the steepness of the curve of those tiny bumps, it doesn't just create a single focal point in front of the retina.
What does it do?
It creates what the researchers call a volume of non-focused light.
They call it a Von and F.L. in the paper. It sounds like some kind of sci-fi weapon.
It does, but it's really just a 3D cloud of light.
A cloud of light.
Imagine a 3D cloud of light sort of hovering inside the eyeball just in front of the retina, and this cloud acts as that stop signal.
Okay.
The retina detects this defocus, and it initiates this biochemical cascade that effectively stiffens the sclera, the white outer shell of the eye, and says, do not stretch any further.
So the clear center lets the kid see, but the 11 rings create this 3D shield of light that acts as the therapy.
That's the mechanism. Now, here is the crucial difference between the two contenders. The standard H.A.L.T lens, the one you can buy today, it creates a signal, this Vaughn NFL, that is about 0.7 millimeters wide.
0.7 millimeters.
And it sits roughly 1.2 millimeters in front of the retina.
Okay, so that's our baseline. A signal width of 0.7 millimeter positioned 1.2 millimeters away. Now, enter the challenger, H.A.L.T max. What did the engineers change to make it max?
Well, they worked on the hypothesis of a dose-response relationship.
Like in medicine.
Exactly. If a little bit of signal works, maybe a stronger signal works better. So they increased the asphericity of those tiny lenslets. They made the curve steeper, more aggressive.
They turned the knob to 11.
In optical terms, yes. By increasing that asphericity, the H.A.L.T max creates a volume of non-focused light that is, well, it's massively expanded. It is 1.6 millimeters wide.
Whoa, so more than double the standard width.
More than double. And its position changes, too.
It does.
Correct. It sits much further away from the retina. We're talking 2.3 millimeters in front compared to the standard 1.2.
So if I'm visualizing this right, the standard lens puts a small stop sign kind of close to the retina. The max lens puts this massive, thick barricade much further forward in the eye.
That's a great analogy. The idea is that by moving the signal forward and making it louder or thicker, you make it harder for the eye to ignore. You represent a much stronger barrier against that axial elongation.
So that's the theory. Bigger cloud, stronger signal, better control. But theory is one thing. Clinical reality is another.
Absolutely.
And this brings us to the study design, which I thought was just incredibly elegant. It's not your typical drug trial.
No, it is one of the most robust ways to test an optical intervention. It's called a randomized contralateral crossover trial.
Let's deconstruct that, because contralateral crossover sounds like a dance move, but in statistics, it's a gold standard.
It is. Contralateral simply means opposite side. So in this context, it means the child wore a different lens on each eye. One eye got the standard H.A.L.T lens.
And the other eye got the MAX.
The other eye got the MX.
And this is so crucial, because it solves the biggest problem in myopia studies, which is environmental noise.
Oh, absolutely.
Usually, if you compare Group A to Group B, you have to worry, did Group A read more?
Yeah.
Did Group B spend more time outdoors?
Exactly. Genetics, lifestyle, diet, it's all noise. But here, the child is their own control. The right eye and the left eye are reading the same book, sleeping the same hours, getting the same sunlight.
The only variable is the lens.
The only variable.
And then there's the crossover part.
Right. So for the first 6 months, that's phase 1. Let's say your right eye has the max and your left has the standard.
Okay.
At a 6-month mark, they swap. The right eye gets the standard and the left eye gets the max.
So they recruited 50 Singaporean children for this, age 6 to 10. And I noticed the completion rate was 100%.
Yeah.
No dropouts.
Which is just astonishing. I mean, usually in a year-long study with kids, you lose someone. They move, they lose their glasses. They just decide they don't want to do it anymore.
Yeah.
But everyone finished.
I have to ask about the wearer experience, though. I wear glasses. If my left lens had a different design than my right lens, I feel like I'd be walking into door frames. It sounds really disorienting.
Yeah, that was a major concern going in.
So did the kids tolerate it?
They did. The safety data was very reassuring. They found that 88% of the children adapted within just 2 to 4 days.
That's faster than I adapt to a new normal prescription.
It is. And they tested binocular vision thoroughly, so how the eyes work together for depth perception and fusion, and it remained totally normal.
Wow.
The brain is just incredibly plastic, especially at that age. It just accepted the 2 different optical inputs and merged them.
So we have a perfectly controlled setup. 50 kids, 1 year, swapping lenses halfway through to prove it wasn't just one eye being naturally worse. Let's get to the numbers.
Okay.
Did the max lens actually outperform the standard?
The short answer is yes, and significantly so. The primary metric here is axial length, the physical length of the eyeball from front to back.
And we want that number to stay static. Growth equals bad.
Correct. So in phase 1, that's the first 6 months, the eyes wearing the standard H.A.L.T lens grew by an average of 0.105 millimeters.
Okay, 0.105. So that's our baseline for what good control looks like.
Right. Now, the eyes wearing the H.A.L.T max in that same period, They grew only 0.043 millimeters.
That is less than half the growth. That is a massive
It
reduction.
is, and then they switched, and this is where the data gets really compelling. In phase 2, the eyes that switched to the max lens slowed down significantly,
Okay.
but the eyes that switched back to the standard lens sped up a little bit.
So the effect tracks perfectly with the lens, not the eye. It's not some lingering effect. It's the active presence of that max lens doing the work.
Exactly. Over the full 12 months, the cumulative effect was that using the max lens resulted in an additional slowing of 0.107 millimeters compared to the standard.
And just to put that in perspective for you listening, zero point 0.1 millimeters might sound like a hair's breadth.
It does.
But in the world of the eyeball, where every millimeter of growth adds significant risk of, retinal detachment or glaucoma later in life, that is a huge margin of safety.
It really is. It translates to a significant chunk of diopters saved. It's the difference between ending up with a high prescription that requires thick glasses and higher health risks versus a more moderate one.
Now, we teased this at the beginning, and I want to dive into it. The shortening.
Yes.
The study reported that some eyes didn't just grow slower, they actually lost length.
Yeah.
How is that physically possible? I thought the eye was like a balloon. Once you stretch it, it's stretched.
That has been the dogma for a long time. But we're learning the eye is more dynamic than we thought. So in phase 1, 12 out of the 50 eyes wearing the max lens showed a reduction in axial length.
12 out of 50.
And in phase 2, it was 11 eyes.
So roughly 20 to 25% of the time, the max lens actually shrank the axial length.
Well, shrank might be a slightly misleading word if we imagine the whole eye collapsing like a deflated ball.
Okay, so what's happening?
What's likely happening is a phenomenon called choroidal thickening.
The choroid being that vascular layer between the retina and the sclera, right?
Right. It's a mesh of blood vessels and connective tissue. And when the eye receives a strong stop signal, like this massive volume of non-focused light, one of the first physiological responses is that the choroid swells. It thickens.
It puffs up.
Exactly. And since the choroid is inside the scleral shell, if it thickens, it pushes the retina forward. So if you measure from the front of the eye to the retina, the distance is shorter.
So the axial length decreases.
Yes.
So the outer shell of the eye didn't necessarily shrink, but the internal wallpaper got thicker, which reduced the room inside.
Primarily, yes. However, sustained choroidal thickening is linked to the modulation of scleral growth. It's the mechanism that eventually stops that outer shell from stretching.
I see.
So seeing the shortening is a very, very positive biomarker. It means the braking system is slamming on hard.
It's just amazing to think that we can manipulate the internal tissue of a human organ just by bending light differently before it even enters the eye.
It really validates that dose-response theory we touched on earlier.
Right.
In pharmacology, if you take 500 milligrams of a painkiller, you get a certain effect. If you take 1,000 milligrams, you get a stronger effect. This study proves optics work the same way.
The dose here being the asphericity in the volume of light.
Exactly. The H.A.L.T max is a high-dose lens. And just like medicine, not everyone needs the highest dose, but for those who are really progressing quickly, it makes a huge difference.
That leads us perfectly into the subgroup analysis. Who actually needs this max dose? Does the study shed any light on who responded best?
It did, and the results are very intuitive for anyone in clinical practice. They found that the children whose eyes were growing the fastest on the standard lens saw the biggest benefit when they switched to the max.
So the fast progressors.
Yeah.
The kids whose prescriptions are jumping by a full diopter every year.
Exactly those kids. The ones who were struggling to be controlled by the standard tech. When you gave them the stronger signal, the high dose, they responded beautifully.
And age played a role too, didn't it?
Yes. While both older and younger kids benefited, the younger children, specifically those under 8.5 years old, saw a much more pronounced difference.
Which makes sense, because that's the age where the eye is naturally trying to grow the fastest. It's the danger zone.
It is, and it suggests that if we can intervene early with a high-dose lens like H.A.L.T max, we can really alter the trajectory of their vision for their entire life.
There was one other technical nugget in the discussion section of the paper that I wanted to clarify.
Okay.
They mentioned the contrast theory as a potential reason why the max works better. Can you explain that in plain English?
Sure. So there is a hypothesis in vision science that high contrast on the peripheral retina, so sharp edges and distinct lines in your side vision, might actually stimulate the eye to grow.
So seeing too clearly in your periphery is a grow signal.
Potentially, yes. The eye thinks, I see sharp edges here. Maybe I need to adjust my length. Conversely, reducing that contrast, making the periphery blurrier or flatter, removes that stimulus.
And because the H.A.L.T. has those highly aspherical lenslets, those steeper curves, it degrades the peripheral image more than the standard lens does.
Exactly. It creates more scatter, more blur in the periphery. So it's a double mechanism. On one hand, you are actively creating that Van Effel stop signal in front of the retina.
Right.
On the other hand, you are suppressing the high contrast growth signal on the retina itself. It's like a two-pronged attack on myopia.
It effectively hacks the eye's growth logic.
It does, and what excites me about this study is that it didn't compare the new tech to plain glass or a placebo. It compared it to what is effectively the current market leader, the standard H.A.L.T, and proved it could do significantly better.
So zooming out, what does this mean for you, if you're listening? If I'm a parent or an optometrist or just someone interested in medtech, what is the practical application here?
I think the big takeaway is that we are moving toward customization. Myopia control is no longer a one-size-fits-all situation.
It's becoming more like a medical prescription. You titrate the dose.
Exactly. Right now, a child walks into a clinic, and they often get the standard control lens. But this data suggests a tiered approach.
So?
If you have a 6-year-old with high parental myopia or a kid who is progressing rapidly, you don't start with the standard. You might go straight to the high-dose max design.
Or you could use it as an escalation strategy. Start standard, monitor for 6 months. If they're still progressing, you upgrade to MAP.
Precisely. It gives the clinician a toolkit. It transforms myopia management from just a product sale into a real long-term treatment plan. We can match the intensity of the treatment to the severity of the condition.
And ultimately, the goal here is preservation.
Yes. We aren't just trying to keep glasses thinner for cosmetic reasons. We are trying to prevent the eyeball from stretching to the point where the retina tears or the optic nerve gets damaged when they're in their 50s and 60s.
And that's the real endgame.
High myopia is a leading cause of blindness. If we keep the prescription low, we drastically reduce that risk.
It really is preventative medicine for the eyes.
It is.
Yeah.
And seeing the efficacy of H.A.L.T. Max gives us hope that we can keep even the most high-risk kids out of that danger zone.
Before we sign off, I want to leave everyone listening with a thought about that shortening effect again.
Yeah.
Because it really feels like we are just scratching the surface of something big.
It is the most provocative part of the data, for sure.
If H.A.L.T. Max is just the current prototype, and we know that turning up the volume on this signal works, are we looking at a future where we don't just stop myopia, but we actually reverse it?
That is the ultimate question.
Could we take a teenager who is, say, a -3, put them in a Supermax lens, and bring them back to a -1?
Well, if we can manipulate the choroid reliably and perhaps induce some scleral remodeling to lock that shorter length in, the door is cracked open.
Wow.
We aren't there yet, and we certainly can't promise that to parents today. But biologically, it's no longer impossible.
It's just a fascinating trajectory. From, here are some glasses so you can see, to, here is a device to reshape your organ.
It's a very exciting time to be in vision science. The technology is finally catching up to the biology.
Well, that is all the time we have for today's deep dive into the H.A.L.T. Max study. We hope this gave you a clearer view, pun intended, of where eye care is heading.
Thanks for having me. It's a complex topic, but a really important one.
Absolutely. A huge thank you to everyone listening. Keep those eyes healthy, and we'll catch you on the next deep dive. Bye.